deep beneath Dragonstone, where the stone sweated warmth and the air tasted of ash. The candle drank the room's light as if it were thirsty for darkness. The surface was not smooth. It bore faint ripples like frozen smoke, and when the flame at its base was coaxed higher, the obsidian did not reflect. It answered. Aelor Vaeloryn did not pray. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, shoulders squared. Watching the candle the way a captain watched a horizon that could hide reefs. Varo and Nyra formed a living frame around him. Their scarred palms held outward, fingers splayed, coaxing heat from the low fire without letting the flame grow wild. Their murmurs were steady, not the ecstatic babble of street preachers, but the measured cadence of a craft. The candle's black skin began to glow from within. Not orange, not yellow. A deep, blood wine red that seeped like slow poison through glass. Shadows in the cavern shuddered and rearranged themselves, stretching toward the light as if desperate to be seen. Nyra's voice slipped through the murmurs. "The bird flies," she said, eyes half-lidded, watching something not in the room. "Black wings against gray. It is carrying your words like a blade under a cloak." "Let it arrive," Aelor answered. His tone held no impatience, yet the air around him tightened all the same. Varo's breath steamed. "The Riverlands reek of death already," he said. "So much blood spent for men's pride." Aelor's gaze did not leave the candle. "Pride is a luxury," he said. "Most kingdoms pay for it with corpses." The obsidian's inner glow sharpened. In its depths a shape formed. First a smear of pale, then the suggestion of stone towers with bridges between, water black beneath. The twins. The image wavered like heat above coals, but it held. Aelor's jaw tightened by a fraction. He saw men moving there, ant small and numerous, banners like colored scraps. He saw a hall lit by torchlight and crowded with bodies. He saw music, not heard, but implied by the movement of hands and mouths. Then the candle's light flared, and for an instant he saw the moment beneath the moment. Doors shutting, crossbows lifted, a blade sliding free like a whisper. Nyra hissed, a sharp intake as if she had tasted something bitter. "It is already decided," she murmured. "It is decided by cowards," Aelor replied, and the contempt in his voice was a colder thing than the cavern's damp. "Cowards can be undone." Varo's eyes burned in the candlelight. "You will go?" he asked, almost hungry. Aelor's gaze flicked toward the cavern mouth where a seam of day showed, pale and distant. Beyond, he knew Kezharys lay on the black sand like a collapsed mountain, listening. "Not yet," Aelor said. "A dragon arrives and the world notices. I need the world to keep looking where it expects." He turned back to the candle. "We will move with quieter feet." Nyra's fingers flexed. "Then let me send the dream," she said. A whisper in the Wolf King's sleep. A taste of blood on his tongue before the cup is raised. He will wake knowing. Aelor considered, the candle's red light painting hard lines on his face. Not a dream, he decided. Dreams can be dismissed. Give him something that stinks of truth. Varo's mouth tightened. A confession, then, a captured tongue. Aelor's eyes narrowed. "And how do we capture a tongue that has not yet spoken?" he asked, though it was not a rebuke. It was a challenge, the kind that made minds sharpen. Nyra smiled, thin and bright. "By listening," she said. "Even wolves leave tracks." Aelor stepped closer to the obsidian candle. The image within shifted again, showing the bridge towers clearer. He watched the tiny figures and felt, beneath his ribs, the old memory of a different feast, a different betrayal, a different world falling apart while men drank and laughed and promised each other tomorrow. He spoke in High Valyrian, the words crisp as snapped bone. The candle's glow steadied. "Find me the knife," he said. "Not the hand that holds it, the mind that ordered it. The one who thinks treachery is clever. Bring me that mind, and I will break the chain before it tightens." Varo and Nyra bowed their heads, not in worship but in agreement. From outside the cavern, Kezharys rumbled. Not a roar, but the deep vibration of a beast acknowledging intent. The sound rolled through the stone like distant thunder, and the candle's red heart pulsed once, as if it had heard the dragon too. Aelor stared into the twins, and in the black glass depth he saw doors closing again and again, as if the future insisted. "Not this time," he whispered, and the candle's light burned brighter in answer. The wind off Shipbreaker Bay never truly rested. It only changed its angle, like a spiteful man deciding which way to strike. Davos braced himself against it on the sea wall, fingers curled around wet stone. Below, the beach stretched dark and slick, and the camps, Stannis's and Aelor's, pressed close now, two worlds forced into neighborly distance. Stannis stood beside him with his cloak snapping like a banner of stubbornness. He watched the movement below the way he watched a battlefield, assessing, judging, searching for weakness. Since the pact in the throne room, Stannis had spoken less, as if words risked admitting the scale of what had come to his island. Aelor Vaeloryn stood in the open yard below, facing a line of stormlords and their captains. Opposite them stood Aelor's own commanders, men in dark armor with red enamel lines, their posture so still it seemed carved. Aelor spoke with the calm authority of a man used to being obeyed, yet he did not bark orders like a Sellsword captain. He explained, he measured, he made his listeners feel as if they were learning rather than being bent. Davos could not hear every word over the wind, but he caught enough. "No brawling," Aelor said, voice carrying in unexpected clarity. "No stealing from the island's folk. Pay for what you take or you take nothing. Anyone who breaks this will answer to me." One of Stannis's men, Ser Godry Faring, harsh and eager, shifted with open skepticism. Aelor's gaze snapped to him, and Davos saw the moment Ser Godry's spine stiffened, as if some invisible hand had pressed it straight. Stannis's mouth tightened. "He speaks like he is already king," he muttered. "He speaks like someone who expects trouble," Davos answered carefully. "And trouble follows armies like flies." Stannis's eyes narrowed. "Do not defend him." Davos did not look away from the yard. "I defend order," he said, and felt the old bitterness twist in him, because he had once been the kind of man order crushed. He had learned, painfully, that without it the poor were the first to bleed. Below, Aelor turned slightly and addressed his own commanders now. "We stay out of the king's halls unless invited," he said. "We do not provoke. We do not answer insults with steel. We answer them with patience." Ser Godry scoffed loudly enough for the yard to hear. "Patience," he spat. "That beast could take King's Landing in a day. Patience is for men without power." Aelor's head turned. His eyes locked on Ser Godry with a calm that felt like the moment a noose went taut. "Power that cannot restrain itself is not power," Aelor said. "It is appetite." The Stormlord flushed, anger rising. "And what would you know of restraint, Dragonlord?" Aelor's smile was faint and without mirth. "Everything," he said. A hush fell that had nothing to do with obedience and everything to do with the sense that the air itself had shifted. Davos saw Melisandre in the shadow of an archway, watching like a woman observing a riv. A priest claim her congregation. Her ruby caught a stray shaft of gray daylight and glimmered like a drop of fresh blood. Aelor continued as if the interruption were nothing. "We will send small ships," he said. "Scouts first. Not an armada. Quiet sailings. We will learn where the lions keep their teeth. We will learn where the wolves are walking into a trap." Stannis's fingers tightened on the wall. "My fleet does not take orders from foreigners." Davos glanced at him. "He's not ordering," Davos said. "He's laying out a plan. You can refuse it." Stannis's eyes were hard. "And if I refuse and he is right?" Davos hesitated. He could not say the answer without making it real. The wind filled the silence for him. Below, Aelor stepped back, concluding. The Stormlords dispersed reluctantly, some casting sour looks at the Dragonlord, others casting fearful ones at the beach where Kezharys lay. The dragon's vast head lifted slightly, one eye opening, and Davos saw men flinch as if the beast's gaze were a physical blow. Stannis watched that eye too. His voice came low, almost to himself. I have waited my whole life to claim what is mine. Davos heard the words as confession more than declaration. Then don't lose it to pride, he said quietly. Stannis's gaze snapped to him. For a heartbeat Davos thought he had overstepped. Then Stannis looked away again, jaw clenched. Pride is all I have left, he said. No, Davos said, the courage of it rising from somewhere stubborn and old. You have duty, and you have people. And if this Dragonlord truly sees what he says he sees, then you have the chance to be more than a man who was right too late. Stannis did not answer, but his shoulders shifted as if the words had found a crack in his armor. Far below, Aelor Vaeloryn looked up toward the sea wall, and for a heartbeat Davos felt the Dragonlord's attention like a weight. Aelor's gaze passed over Stannis and settled briefly on Davos, and Davos wondered if he had just been marked again as the hinge on which a king might swing. Then Kezharys exhaled, steam rolling over black sand, and the day felt smaller beneath the shadow of that sleeping god. The Riverlands smelled like wet earth and old smoke, like fields that had been trampled too many times to remember what peace felt like. Robb Stark's war tent stood on a rise near Riverrun, its canvas dark with damp, its ropes humming in the wind. Inside, the air was thick with sweat and wool and the faint metallic tang of blood that never fully left men who lived by steel. Grey Wind was there before anyone else, as if the dire wolf had claimed the space by instinct. He paced the edges of the tent, nails scraping lightly, muzzle lifted to taste scents no man noticed. Robb had learned to trust that restless energy. Grey Wind's unease was always a warning. It was just that the world offered so many reasons for a wolf to be uneasy. The raven arrived like a piece of night, flapping into the tent's open flap with a gust of cold air. A guard reached for it, but Grey Wind snapped, a sharp sound, and the man froze. The bird hopped once, then once again, and held out its leg like a messenger offering a knife. Robb untied the parchment himself. His fingers were steady, but his chest tightened as if he already knew the words would bite. Catelyn stepped close behind him, her hand hovering near his shoulder without touching. Edmure Tully stood at the table, tired eyes wary. Roose Bolton watched from the side, pale and still, as if he were a shadow in human shape. The great Jon Umber loomed like a thundercloud, his beard bristling, one hand resting on his sword hilt as if the raven might suddenly draw steel. Robb broke the seal. His eyes moved over the ink, and his expression tightened, not with confusion but with the slow, cold shape of disbelief. "Dragonstone," Edmure said, voice edged with disbelief. "A letter from Dragonstone? The handwriting is not a maester's," Catelyn murmured, "but the seal Baratheon's." Robb read again, slower, as if repetition might change the meaning. "Do not go to the twins. Do not trust the bread. They mean to slaughter you." The great Jon barked a laugh, harsh and incredulous. "Slaughter?" he spat. "Walder Frey's an old goat, not a god of death. He'd never dare." Roose Bolton's pale eyes flicked up. "Men dare much when they believe they will profit," he said softly. The words made the tent feel colder. Edmure frowned. "Stannis Baratheon warns you?" he asked Robb. "Since when does Stannis care if the young wolf lives?" Robb's jaw worked. "Since he wants me alive to fight the Lannisters," he said, though he did not sound convinced. Catelyn reached and took the parchment from him gently. She read it once, then again, her face tightening in a way that made Robb's stomach sink. Her voice came low. "This is not a jest," she said. "This reads like a warning from a man who believes it." The great Jon snorted. "Or a warning from a man who wants us to distrust our allies and fracture." Robb's gaze shifted to Roose Bolton. "What do you think?" he asked. Roose's voice remained mild. "If it is false, it costs us nothing but a lit. Please suspicion," he said. "If it is true." He let the thought hang. Grey Wind stopped pacing and pressed closer to Robb, the wolf's shoulder against his leg. Robb felt the heat of him through leather and wool. The direwolf's ears were forward, his eyes fixed on the tent flap as if expecting something to burst through. Catelyn's voice tightened. "The Freys have insulted you," she said. "You took their daughter's hand and broke your oath. Lord Walder is prideful. He is petty. And he has Lannister gold on the table, I have no doubt." Robb's mouth twisted. "I did what I had to," he said, and the defensiveness in him tasted bitter. He had married Jane Westerling in grief and honor and youth, and now every consequence of it rose like a tide. Edmure shifted. "The wedding must happen," he said. "We need the crossing. We need the Freys, however sour they are." "The wedding can happen," Catelyn corrected, "but you do not need to drink their wine like a trusting boy." The Great John bristled. "Are you saying we refuse bread and salt?" he demanded. "That is an insult that would start another war." Robb stared at the parchment in Catelyn's hand. "Bread and salt didn't save my father," he said quietly, and the words fell heavy. Roose Bolton's eyes flickered. "We can take precautions," he said. "Double the guard. Keep your men armed. Keep the bulk of the host outside the twins. Refuse to be enclosed." Edmure grimaced. "Walder Frey will shriek like a stabbed pig if we keep men outside his walls." "Let him shriek," Catelyn said. "Better his pride bleeds than your throat." Robb's hand went to Grey Wind's fur, fingers threading through the thick coat. The wolf leaned into the touch as if desperate for contact. Robb felt suddenly young, too young to be deciding who trusted whom at a wedding table. He thought of his mother's eyes, of Edmure's fatigue, of Roose Bolton's stillness, of the Great John's certainty. And beyond all of them, he imagined Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon, grim and bitter, sealing a warning. He imagined the rumor that had drifted through camp in the last day. A dragon, bigger than Balerion, and a Dragonlord with a foreign host. It sounded like madness, yet the Riverlands had taught Robb one hard truth. Madness had a habit of becoming real. Robb took the parchment back from his mother and folded it carefully as if it were fragile. "We go to the twins," he said at last. "But we go as if wolves are walking into a snare." The Great John opened his mouth to protest, then stopped when Grey Wind growled low, a sound that made every man's skin tighten. Catelyn watched her son, and Robb saw the fear she tried to hide. She had buried one boy already in her mind, and she could not bear the thought of burying another. "Send riders," Robb ordered. "Quiet ones. Let them watch the twins from the woods. Let them count Frey men, Bolton men, any banners that shouldn't be there, and send word to Lord Walder. Polite, grateful, and cold. He will not smell or suspicion." Roose Bolton bowed his head slightly. "As you command," he said. Robb's eyes hardened. "And if this warning is true," he said, voice dropping, "then whoever thinks to make a feast of us will learn what it means to bleed a wolf." Grey Wind's teeth showed in a silent snarl, as if the dire wolf understood every word. When the council dispersed, it did not take the unease with it. The tent seemed to hold it like smoke, thick and clinging. Robb remained at the table, staring at the map as if the ink lines could reveal betrayal. Catelyn waited until the last boots had gone, until the flap fell shut, muffling the camp's distant noise. Only then did she step closer. "You feel it too," she said, not asking. Her voice was steady, but her fingers were white where they clasped together. Robb's gaze did not lift. "I feel many things," he replied, and the bitterness in him sounded too much like Eddard's when he spoke of King's Landing. Catelyn moved to sit beside him. The lantern light caught the tired lines on his face. Lines no boy of 16 should have worn. War had carved him into a man and left the raw edges unhealed. "The Freys," she said quietly. "They have always been petty, but slaughter at a wedding, that is another kind of sin." Robb's mouth twisted. "Sin doesn't stop a blade," he said. Catelyn reached out, touched his forearm gently, and felt him tense before he allowed the contact. "Your father believed in oaths," she whispered. "He believed in honor. He believed the world would answer truth with truth." Robb finally looked at her, and in his eyes she saw the boy beneath the king, the child who had once clung to her skirts in Winterfell's halls. And the world answered him with an axe. he said, voice hoarse. Catelyn swallowed. She had watched that blade fall in her mind 1,000 times. She had woken with it in her throat. Yes, she said, and I will not watch it fall on you. Robb's gaze flicked away. Outside the tent, Grey Wind's restless pacing scratched faintly. Catelyn listened to it, and the sound made her chest ache. Wolves knew danger by scent. Men had to learn it the hard way. This warning, Robb said, tapping the folded parchment, could be a trap too. It could, Catelyn agreed. But Stannis Baratheon is not known for tricks. He is known for bluntness and pride. If he is warning you, it is because he thinks you dying harms him. Robb snorted softly. Or because this Dragonlord told him to. The word Dragonlord tasted like nonsense on the tongue, yet it sat in the room like another presence. Catelyn had heard whispers, sailors talking in low voices, camp followers exchanging rumors with wide eyes, a dragon bigger than Balerion, a host of red priests, a man with silver hair who pushed kings around like pieces on a board. She could not decide whether it sounded like salvation or disaster. Robb leaned back, rubbing his eyes. If the Freys mean to betray us, Roose Bolton will know, he said, and Catelyn felt her stomach tighten. Roose Bolton's quiet had always unnerved her. A man who never raised his voice rarely needed to. Robb noticed her expression. You don't trust him, he said. I trust him as far as I could throw him, Catelyn replied, and bitterness sharpened her words. He is loyal to power. If he thinks the Lannisters will win, he will find a way to stand beside them without admitting he moved. Robb's jaw clenched. Then he will have to move fast, he said, and there was steel in it. Because I am not dead yet. Catelyn's hands tightened. Robb, she whispered. He looked at her again, and for a heartbeat she saw the weight of the realm in his eyes. I will not die in a hall like a lamb, he said. Not while Grey Wind is breathing. Not while my men are outside. Not while there is even a chance to turn the snare back on the ones who set it. Catelyn leaned closer. Then listen, she said, voice low. Do not drink. Do not eat. Do not let them separate you from your guard. Do not let them close doors with you inside. If the music changes, if the air feels wrong, leave. Even if it insults every lord in that hall, even if it starts another war. Leave. Robb stared at her for a long moment, then nodded once. I hear you, he said. Catelyn breathed out slowly. And Grey Wind, she added. He should not be penned. Robb's lips tightened. Walder will insist. Then refuse, she said. Let him choke on his insistence. A wolf does not belong in a cage. Neither do you. Outside, Grey Wind gave a low, uneasy sound. Catelyn felt her skin prickle. Robb heard it too. He stood abruptly and moved to the tent flap, pushing it open a fraction. Cold air and damp rushed in. Grey Wind stood just beyond, head lifted, eyes fixed on the dark line of trees. The direwolf's hackles were raised. He looked like a shadow made sharp. What is it? Robb murmured, and Catelyn stepped to his side. In the distance, beyond the camp's torches, the woods were only a wall of black. Yet Catelyn felt it too. An impression, like being watched by something patient and unseen. Robb's hand tightened on the flap. Get my riders moving, he said over his shoulder. Tonight, quiet. I want eyes on the twins before sunrise. Catelyn watched him, and in her chest fear and pride tangled together until she could not tell one from the other. This was her son, the boy she had raised, now steering an army through shadows. Somewhere far away, a raven beat toward them through gray skies, carrying a warning that might be the only thin thread between Robb Stark and a death fit for songs. Catelyn did not want songs. She wanted her son alive. At the twins, the river ran beneath stone like a throat beneath a clenched jaw. The castle's 2 towers rose on either side, linked by the bridge that made House Frey rich and smug. The air inside the great hall smelled of damp wool, old rushes, and a sour undercurrent of resentment that had seeped into the stones over generations. Lord Walder Frey sat high, wrapped in blankets as if the chill were trying to claim him early. Age had made him small, but it had not made him harmless. His eyes were sharp and mean, and they flicked over his sons and grandsons like a man counting coins to be certain none had gone missing. Below him, Lothar Frey leaned close, whispering. Black Walder Rivers stood a step back, arms crossed, the bastard's smile carved hard. Roose Bolton waited at Walder's side like a pale ghost, hands folded, expression mild. "They're coming," Lothar murmured. "The wolf and his mother. Edmure too." Walder's lip curled. "Aye, they're coming," he rasped. After spitting on my oath and my daughter like a boy wiping mud on his boots. He lifted a trembling finger. "They'll pay." Black Walder's eyes gleamed. "They'll die," he corrected, as if stating a simple fact. Walder's gaze snapped to him. "Careful," he croaked. "Do you think I don't know what happens when you kill a king? The gods look at you then. The world looks." Roose Bolton spoke softly. "The world will look elsewhere," he said. "It always does when there is gold to chase and fear to swallow it." Walder's eyes narrowed. "And what of this talk?" he demanded. "This dragon, this foreign bastard landing on Dragonstone with a beast bigger than Balerion. You hear it, don't you? My fools say it's true." Lothar swallowed. "Men talk," he said cautiously. "Sailors, traitors." Black Walder shrugged. "Dragons or no, steel still cuts," he said. "A belly doesn't stop a bolt." Roose Bolton's pale eyes flickered. "Dragons change the courage of men," he said. "They change how quickly a rumor becomes an army." Walder's jaw worked. "If that Dragonlord flies north," he rasped, "and sees my bridge burning." "He will not," Roose said gently. "Not yet. He has made himself known on Dragonstone. He will hold there, feeding his image, making kings look at him. He will not waste his first fire on a river crossing." Walder stared at Roose as if trying to read what lay beneath the calm. "You are sure of that?" Roose's mouth curved faintly. "As sure as anyone can be," he said. "And even if he comes, the deed will be done before his shadow falls." Walder's fingers twitched on the armrest. "I do not like risk," he muttered, though his whole life had been built on the risk of tolls and betrayals. "I do not like surprises." Black Walder leaned in, voice low and eager. "Then we make the surprise ours," he said. "We do it clean. We do it quick." Lothar's whisper came again, strained. "The wolf may take precautions. He's not a fool." Roose Bolton's gaze drifted to the hall's hearth, where a fire crack cled. "Precautions can be guided," he said. "A cautious man can still be trapped if he thinks he is controlling the trap." Walder's eyes narrowed. "And how do we guide him?" Roose's voice remained mild. "With comfort," he said. "With courtesy. With bread and salt and songs. Make him think his suspicion is insulting your pride. He will want to appear magnanimous. Young kings are hungry to be loved." Walder's mouth twisted. "He will be loved," he croaked, and there was something ugly and delighted in it. "Loved like a pig at slaughter." Black Walder's smile widened. Yet beneath their plotting, an unease lingered, like a draft no rushes could hide. Walder Frey stared at the hearth's flame and imagined, unbidden, a dragon's breath turning stone to molten ruin. He had lived too long to believe himself invincible. What if the warning reached him? Walder asked abruptly, and his voice sharpened. Lothar stiffened. "What warning?" Walder's eyes snapped to Roose Bolton. "Stannis Baratheon," he rasped. "They say he sent a raven, a warning not to trust us." The hall's murmur tightened. Black Walder's smile faltered for the first time. Lothar's throat worked. Roose Bolton's expression did not change. "If a raven arrives," he said softly, "the wolf will think it a trick, and if he does not, then we adjust." He looked at Walder with calm certainty. "We are not waiting on his ignorance, my lord. We are waiting on his presence." Walder stared at him, then spat into the rushes. "Fine," he croaked. "Fine. We do it. We do it and be done." Black Walder's eyes glittered again. "Good," he murmured, like a man tasting blood before it came. Walder Frey leaned back, blankets rustling, and the old lord's gaze went distant as if he could see the feast already. Candles, music, laughter forced by fear, and then the sudden, sharp silence when knives did what words could not. Outside, the river flowed beneath his bridge, indifferent as always, carrying the cold northward like a quiet promise. The march to the twins felt different from other marches, though the road was the same mud and the same broken fences and the same burned farmsteads. It was the feeling of walking toward a door you suspected might slam shut behind you. Robb rode at the front, cloak pulled tight, rain turning his hair darker, making him look older. Gray wind ran beside his horse like a shadow that refused to fall behind. The direwolf's paws made little sound on wet earth, but his presence was loud in other ways. Men looked at him and remembered they marched with something wild. Catelyn rode a little behind Robb, her hands tight on the reins. She watched the woods, the bends in the road, the crows that lifted from trees when their column approached. Every flutter of black wings made her think of ravens and warnings and the sharp line between belief and madness. Edmure Tully tried to keep his voice light, but fatigue weighed it down. "Walder will be pleased," he said at one point, as if repeating a line he needed to convince himself of. A wedding, reconciliation. Robb did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was flat. "Walder will be pleased when he gets what he wants," he said. "The question is what else he wants." Catelyn felt her stomach tighten. In her mind she saw Walder Frey's small eyes, his thin smile. She had endured the man once before, and she had learned that his courtesy was always a bargaining chip. The column stretched behind them. Northern men with wolf banners damp and heavy, Riverlord's colors muted by rain, wagons creaking. Robb had ordered the bulk of the host to remain a day's march back, in the shelter of a small wood, with riders ready to move if needed. He went to the twins with fewer men than tradition demanded for honor, but more than Walder would like for control. He would not be penned. That much Catelyn had hammered into him until he had finally nodded, jaw tight, accepting the insult it would cause. Gray wind suddenly slowed, hackles lifting. The direwolf's head turned toward the woods, ears forward, nostrils flaring. Robb's hand tightened on the reins. "What is it?" he murmured. No one answered. The rain drummed on leaves. The woods were thick, black trunks and dripping branches, and for a heartbeat Catelyn felt the old childhood fear of forests, of eyes watching from darkness. Then a deer burst from the trees, panicked, leaping into the road before darting away. Gray wind's growl softened, but he did not relax. He kept glancing back, as if something else had moved that the men could not see. Roose Bolton rode nearer the rear of the visible column, pale and still on his horse. His men kept disciplined spacing, their banners flapping like dull wounds. Catelyn watched him in sidelong glances. He never looked troubled. He never sweated fear. That, more than anything, unnerved her. At a brief halt near a broken stone marker, Robb gathered his captains quietly. Not all, only those he trusted most. The great John Umber, Dacey Mormont, Galbart Glover, a few others whose loyalty had been proven in blood. Catelyn saw Roose Bolton was not invited. Neither was that a comfort. Excluding a man like Bolton could be as dangerous as trusting him. Robb spoke low, rain running down his face. "If anything feels wrong inside those walls," he said, "we leave. No argument, no pride. We leave." The great John scowled. "Aye," he growled, but the words sounded like swallowing stones. Dacey Mormont's eyes were sharp. "They will try to separate you," she warned. "They always do at feasts. Men get drunk, guards get careless." Robb nodded. "Then we don't get drunk," he said, "and our guards don't get careless." Catelyn watched her son speak with that cold authority, and she felt pride and sorrow twist together. Ned would have hated this, his boy forced to think like a suspicious lord instead of an honorable one. When they rode again, the air seemed to tighten as the twins' towers finally appeared ahead. Two gray shapes rising from mist like clenched fists. The bridge between them looked like a throat waiting to swallow. Gray wind began to snarl openly, a low sound that spread unease through the column. Horses shied. Men shifted hands on spear shafts. Robb's voice came low. "Easy," he murmured to the wolf, but gray wind did not ease. Caitlyn's heart thudded. She watched the towers grow closer and felt, deep in her bones, the sense of walking into a place where the gods' eyes turned away. Not all wars were fought with banners. Aelor Vaeloryn's first move beyond Dragonstone was not the dragon's shadow. It was two figures traveling under rain and darkness, cloaks pulled low, boots sinking into flooded ruts. Ser Colin Morriger, one of Aelor's black-armored captains, had removed the red enamel markings from his cuirass and wrapped his sword hilt in plain leather to make it look like any Sellsword's blade. Beside him walked Selmer Corythes, a sorcerer whose eyes were dark and quiet, as if he had learned to keep all reaction behind them. They moved through a village that had once been called something simple and forgettable. Now it was just a smear of mud and broken roofs. Smoke rose from a few chimneys. Most houses were black shells. Peasants watched from doorways with the dull, hungry fear of people who had seen too many armed men and learned none of them were saviors. Colin's hand remained near his sword but not on it. He had been chosen because he could keep restraint like a weapon. "We will pay," he told an old woman who flinched when he approached. He held out a small leather pouch. Silver clinked. Her eyes widened, suspicion fighting need. "Pay?" she rasped. "No one pays." "We do," Colin said, and his voice was firm enough to feel real. Selmer knelt in the mud beside a broken well and drew a small brazier from a satchel. He placed it carefully, then sprinkled sea salt in a tight circle around it. The salt did not dissolve in the wet. It sat bright and white against brown mud like a line drawn by a god. The peasants murmured. One man crossed himself. Another spat. Selmer touched the brazier's cold coals, and flame bloomed, steady and low, as if the rain had forgotten how to exist inside the circle. The light painted faces in orange. Hollow cheeks, wide eyes, children clutching skirts. Colin watched the treeline and the ruined huts at the village edge. He had learned in Essos that broken places attracted predators. Men who could not feed themselves by honest work fed on weaker men instead. A shadow moved between huts. Another. Selmer's eyes flicked up, meeting Colin's briefly. He had sensed them too. Colin spoke softly, without turning. "Show yourselves," he called. Silence. Then a laugh, thin and mean. A man stepped out holding a rusted spear. Others followed, half a dozen, lean and hard-eyed, dressed in stolen scraps. Outlaws, deserters, wolves in human skin, travelers in the night, the spearman sneered, with silver pouches and a magic fire. "You lost, are you?" Colin did not move. "We are passing through," he said. "We will not trouble you." The outlaw's eyes went to the silver pouch still in the old woman's hand. Greed sharpened his face. "Looks like you already are," he said. Selmer's fingers hovered near the brazier flame. The fire did not flare. It waited, obedient and hungry. Colin's voice remained calm. "Leave," he said, "and you live." The outlaw laughed again. "And if we don't?" Colin took on. He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "Then you die," he said plainly. The outlaw's smile faltered, just a fraction. Confidence was easy when facing frightened peasants. It wavered when faced with men who did not fear. "Get them," the outlaw snapped. They rushed, for men with spears and knives, boots splashing. Colin moved like a man who had drilled death until it was simple. His sword came out in a smooth arc, catching torchlight even in the rain. He parried the first spear, stepped inside, and drove the blade through a man's chest with one clean thrust. The man's breath left him in a wet gasp, and he collapsed into mud. Selmer lifted his hand, and the brazier flame stretched upward like a living tongue. It did not leap wild. It slid, controlled, snaking toward the second attacker's face. The man screamed as heat kissed him, not burning flesh to char but searing enough to blind. He dropped his knife and clawed at his eyes, shrieking. Colin spun, using the blinded man's panic as cover. He struck the third attacker's wrist, severing tendons, then slammed his pommel into the man's jaw. Teeth cracked. Blood sprayed dark against rain. The outlaw leader hesitated, just long enough for Selmer's gaze to lock onto him. The sorcerer murmured a word that sounded like a stone grinding. The outlaw's breath caught. His hands went to his throat as if invisible fingers squeezed. He dropped to his knees, eyes bulging, choking on nothing. Colin walked toward him, sword held low. "Stop," he said, not to the outlaw but to the others. His voice carried a weight that made them freeze. He pointed the sword tip at the leader's cheek. "You live," he said. "If you speak." The outlaw leader gagged, barely able to nod. Selmer released whatever invisible grip held him. The man sucked air like a drowning swimmer. Colin's voice was quiet. "Who holds these roads?" he asked. "Who pays you? Who tells you where to strike?" The outlaw coughed, eyes watering. "No one," he rasped. "We take what we can." Colin's gaze sharpened. "Lie again," he said, "and you die slowly." The outlaw's eyes darted to Selmer's steady flame, to the dead men in the mud. Fear finally overpowered pride. "Bolton riders," he whispered hoarsely. "Sometimes they pass through. They don't pay, but they tell. They say where wolves march. They say where gold will be." Colin felt a cold knot form in his gut. Bolton. The name was a shadow in Westeros, even in Essos, carried by travelers who spoke of flayed men and quiet cruelty. Selmer's eyes narrowed. "Where?" he asked. The outlaw swallowed. "Near the twins," he whispered. "Always near the twins." Colin's grip tightened on his sword. This was the knife Aelor had wanted, not the hand, but the mind behind. Bolton whispers guiding wolves toward a feast. Colin looked at the peasants watching from doorways. Their faces held a new expression now, something fragile. Hope mixed with terror. They had seen armed men fight for their own purposes and loot. Ave them to rot. They had never seen armed men pay silver and punish outlaws without taking more. "Tell your people," Colin said to the old woman, voice firm. "If strangers in black armor come, you run. If banners of flayed men appear, you hide. And if you see a wolf king pass, you warn him that the road ahead is hungry." The woman's hands trembled around the silver pouch. "Who are you?" she whispered. Colin paused. He did not give her Aelor's name. Names traveled too fast. He only said, "We are the ones who refuse to let treachery be rewarded." Selmer extinguished the brazier flame with a gesture, and the rain rushed in to claim the space again, as if relieved. They left the village behind, moving back into darkness with the knowledge that a pale lord's whispers were already circling the twins like crows. The rain made the world smell clean even when it wasn't. It washed blood into mud and left everything looking the same color. Brown, gray, and dead. Arya Stark lay in a ditch with wet grass stuck to her cheek. Her small body pressed flat, breath held tight in her throat. Beside her, Sandor Clegane crouched like a wounded bear, his scarred face turned toward the road, one hand resting on the hilt of his sword. He did not fear men. He feared boredom, hunger, and the kind of fire that had already taken half his face. They watched two travelers pass. One was broad-shouldered, moving with the easy caution of a warrior. The other walked more quietly, head slightly bowed, as if listening to something in the air. Their cloaks were dark, their boots splashing softly. They did not look like knights. They did not look like peasants. They looked like men who belonged to a larger thing. Arya's eyes followed them. Something in her, some wolf instinct left over from Winterfell, twitched. She did not know their faces, but she knew the feeling of danger walking calmly. Sandor's voice was a low growl. "Stay," he muttered, a command, because he had learned Arya's first instinct was to bite. Arya ignored him in her mind, because ignoring Sandor was as natural as breathing. Her fingers tightened around the thin blade she had stolen and named. Needle. It felt small and silly compared to Sandor's heavy sword. Yet it was hers. The travelers did not speak as they passed. But as they moved beyond the ditch, Arya caught a faint smell on the wind, salt and smoke, and something else, like metal heated too long. She glanced past them toward the village behind. Firelight flickered there. Shapes lay in the mud near the road, dark and still. Dead men. Outlaws, perhaps. Arya had seen enough dead men lately that it did not shock her. What shocked her was the way the village's doorways held faces peering out. Not with the usual numb fear, but with something wary and grateful. Sandor's scarred mouth twisted. "Whoever they are," he muttered, "they're not common." Arya's whisper was sharp. "Follow them," she said. Sandor let out a sound that might have been a laugh if his throat remembered how. "Are you stupid?" he hissed. "We follow nobody. We go to the twins. I get paid. You stop trying to run off and get killed." "The twins?" Arya repeated, and the word made her stomach clench. She didn't know why. It was just a castle, just another stone thing in a land full of stone things. Yet every time someone said it, her skin prickled. Sandor watched the road ahead. "Those two," he said, voice low, "walk like soldiers. The quiet one, he's worse. I've seen men like that. Not the mummers kind of sorcerer. The kind who makes fire behave." Arya's heart thudded. "Fire?" she whispered. Sandor's eyes flicked to her, and for a moment she saw genuine discomfort there. "I smelled it," he said. "Like hot iron." Arya's mind raced. Fire made her think of King's Landing, of the smell of burning flesh, of her father's head on a spike, of all the things she wanted to kill. Fire also made her think of dragons. Stories old Nan had told, tales of Targaryens and skies full of wings. She remembered the whispers she had heard in inns. A dragon bigger than any, a Dragonlord in Dragonstone. It sounded like a story to frighten children. But the Riverlands were full of stories that turned into knives. The two travelers slowed briefly at a bend in the road. The broad one, Ser Colin, though Arya did not know his name, turned his head slightly, scanning the ditch line. Arya froze, breath locked. Sandor's hand tightened on his sword. The man's gaze passed over their hiding place without stopping. Then he moved on, cloak flaring as wind caught it. The quiet one, Selmer, did not turn his head at all. Yet Arya had the sudden, unnerving sense that he knew exactly where she was, that he simply did not care. When the travelers vanished into the rain and trees, Arya released her breath in a shaky exhale. Sandor grunted. "See," he muttered, "nothing good comes from following strangers." Arya wiped wet grass from her cheek and stared at the road. "They're going to the twins," she said, certainty hardening. Sandor's mouth twisted. "Everyone's going to the twins," he said. "No," Arya whispered, and she did not know how she knew. "They're going for something." Sandor glanced at her, then looked away. He did not like the way her instincts were often right. They rose from the ditch and moved along the road, keeping to shadows, the rain hiding their tracks. Arya's small hand stayed tight around Needle. Sandor's heavy steps followed. Ahead, somewhere beyond the trees, the twins waited with stone jaws open, and somewhere in the rain behind them, two strangers walked with salt and fire and purpose, as if they carried the first crack in a betrayal that thought itself clever. The twins did not welcome. It tolerated the way a man tolerated a guest he meant to cheat. The bridge gate opened with a groan of iron, and Robb Stark rode beneath stone archways slick with rain. The courtyard beyond was crowded. Frey men lining walls, their spears upright, their eyes sharp. Torches burned under overhangs, throwing weak light that made the wet stone glisten like skin. Gray wind padded beside Robb's horse, lips curled back from his teeth in a silent snarl. The direwolf's hackles were raised so high he looked larger than he was. Men flinched when his gaze swept them. Some spat, some muttered prayers. A few tightened their grip on spears and tried to look brave. Robb kept his posture straight, chin lifted. He did not let his eyes dart. A king did not show he was measuring exits. Catelyn rode beside him, her face calm as a carved mask, though inside her heart hammered. She watched every balcony, Every arrow slit, every cluster of men that seemed too still. The Freys were smiling too much. That alone was suspicious. Lord Walder Frey waited beneath a canopy, wrapped in rich cloth as if he feared rain might melt him. Beside him stood Rosalind Frey, small and pale, eyes downcast. Lothar Frey leaned in near Walder's ear, his smile polite enough to cut. "My Lord King," Walder croaked, voice thin but sharp. "Welcome, welcome. Come to mend what you broke, have you?" Robb forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I come to honor my uncle's wedding," he said, "and to honor House Frey." Walder's eyes flicked to Grey Wind. "That beast will not come into my hall," he rasped at once, as if the words were a reflex. Grey Wind growled, low and rumbling. Robb's hand tightened on the reins. His voice stayed level. "Grey Wind stays with me," he said. Walder's smile tightened. "Nonsense. Wolves don't belong at weddings." "They belong with their pack," Robb replied, the edge in his tone barely hidden. A flicker of irritation crossed Walder's face. He did not like being refused. He did not like being challenged in front of his men. His small eyes narrowed. Catelyn leaned slightly toward Robb, murmuring without moving her lips. "Do not," she warned softly. "Do not let pride trap you." Robb's jaw worked. He knew she was right. He also knew yielding here would feel like stepping onto a hook. Edmure rode in behind them, forcing a grin, trying to keep peace. "Lord Walder," he said, voice bright with strain. "Surely we can." Walder waved him off. "You can do what you like, my Lord Trout," he rasped. "It's the wolf boy who thinks he can bring fangs to my table." Robb stared at Walder Frey, and Catelyn saw the moment her son's temper rose. Young, hot, dangerous. Then Robb exhaled slowly, forcing himself into cold control. "Grey Wind will not be penned," Robb said. "But he will not sit at your table either. He will remain in the courtyard with my guards. If that offends you, I will take my men and leave, and you may explain to the realm why you are." Effused a king's attempt at reconciliation. Walder's face tightened. His eyes flicked to the Frey men, to the northern guards at the gate, to the way Robb's men held themselves ready. Walder was a coward, but he was not a fool. He could not risk the appearance of driving the young wolf away. For a heartbeat, the air in the courtyard held its breath. Then Walder's smile returned, thinner and uglier. "Fine," he croaked. "Fine. Keep your dog in the yard. Just keep it from biting my grandchildren." Grey Wind's growl deepened as if offended by the word dog. Robb dismounted. Catelyn followed, boots splashing in puddles. Walder's attendants moved forward, offering bread and salt on a tray. Catelyn's stomach clenched. There it was. The ritual, the promise that meant safety in a world built on oaths. Robb's gaze flicked to the bread, then to his mother, then to Grey Wind, who snarled softly, eyes fixed on the Frey soldiers along the walls. Robb reached out, took a small piece of bread, and touched it to his lips, barely. Enough to satisfy custom, not enough to swallow. Catelyn saw the subtle defiance in it and felt fear spike anyway. Custom was not a shield. It was only a story men agreed to believe. Walder watched closely, eyes glittering. "Good," he rasped. "Good. Now we eat and drink and laugh like proper folk. No more war between us." Robb smiled, cold. "No more war," he echoed, and Catelyn heard the lie in it like a cracked bell. As they moved toward the hall, Grey Wind's growl followed, and Catelyn felt the walls of the twins closing in around them like a slow, patient snare. The chamber they were given was modest, stone walls sweating damp, a narrow window looking down toward the river. A fire crackled in a small hearth, but it did little to warm the air. The twins was a place built to keep outsiders uncomfortable, to remind them who owned the bridge and who owned the door. Robb stood near the window, staring at the river below. The water moved dark and steady, indifferent. Catelyn watched him, her arms folded tightly, as if holding herself together by force. The great John Umber filled half the room, looming and restless. Daisy Mormont stood near the door, hand near her sword, eyes sharp as a hawk's. Their guards were outside. More than Walder would like, fewer than Robb would prefer. The compromise sat in the air like sour wine. A knock came. Daisy opened the door a crack, blade visible in the gap. A Frey servant girl stood there holding a jug of wine, her hands shaking so badly the liquid sloshed. "Leave it," Daisy said, voice cold. The girl's eyes darted past Daisy into the room, wild with something like terror. I have to," she whispered, barely audible. "They told me." Daisy's gaze narrowed. "Who told you?" The girl swallowed hard. Her throat worked. My lord Lothar," she stammered. "He said if I didn't bring it, he'd..." She stopped, eyes flicking to Robb, then to Catelyn. "Please," she whispered. "I don't want." Robb stepped forward. "What is it?" he asked, voice steady, soft enough not to frighten her more. The girl's eyes filled with tears. They're moving men," she whispered, words spilling out like blood from a cut. "Up into the galleries. Crossbows. Under the music. I heard them laughing about wolves bleeding." The Grachan's face darkened, rage rising like thunder. "I'll gut every..." Robb lifted a hand sharply, stopping him. His heart hammered, but his voice remained controlled. "Who?" he asked the girl. She shook her head frantically. "I don't know," she whispered. "Frey men. Bolton men too, quiet ones. They said it would be quick. They said the doors..." She choked, covering her mouth. "They said the doors will shut." Catelyn felt cold spread through her chest, turning her bones to ice. The warning, the raven, the wolf instinct. It was all here now, in a shaking girl's whisper, in the way the twin stones seemed to listen. Robb's face went hard, the boy gone in an instant, replaced by the king. "Thank you," he said to the girl, and his voice carried a weight that made her sob quietly. He reached into a pouch and pressed a silver coin into her palm. "Go," he told her. "Now, leave the jug, and do not speak of this to anyone." She stared at the coin as if it were a miracle, then nodded frantically and fled down the corridor, her footsteps echoing. The Great John turned, furious. "We kill them first," he growled. "We take the hall and..." "No," Robb said, voice low and sharp. "Not yet." He looked at Daisy. "Get our men ready. Quiet. No shouting. No still. Drawn where they can see." Daisy nodded once, already moving. Catelyn stepped closer to Robb, her voice trembling despite herself. "Robb," she whispered. He met her eyes. "They meant to slaughter us," he said softly, and there was no disbelief left, only cold certainty. "We leave." "The doors," Catelyn began. "We leave before they shut," Robb finished. He turned toward the Great John. "You take half our guards and move to the courtyard," he ordered. "Get Grey Wind moving toward the gate. If the Freys try to bar it, you break them." The Grachan's grin was savage. "Gladly," he rumbled. Robb's gaze snapped back to Catelyn. "You stay with me," he said. "No se peraschen." Catelyn nodded, though fear threatened to make her knees weak. Outside the chamber, music drifted faintly through stone. Fiddles and drums, a wedding tune trying to sound joyful. It made the hair on Catelyn's arms rise. Joy was a mask. Tonight it was a shroud. Robb moved to the door and listened. Footsteps in the corridor. Faint. A laugh. The clink of cups. The soft shuffle of men taking positions. He looked back at his mother, at the Great John, at Daisy's retreating form. "No pride," he murmured, almost to himself, repeating the promise he had made on the road. "No honor at the cost of our throats." Grey Wind's distant snarl echoed from the courtyard below, followed by a sudden shout, cut off quickly. Robb's hand went to his sword. He did not draw it yet. He held it like a thought held behind teeth. Then he opened the door, stepping into the corridor with the calm of a man walking into a storm he had finally named. Robb stepped into the corridor and the twins immediately felt like a throat tightening. Stone walls pressed close, slick with damp, the torchlight thin and yellow. The music from the hall drifted through arches ahead, fiddles trying too hard to sound merry, drums muffled as if beaten under a blanket. Under it all, another sound threaded, the soft, deliberate shuffle of boots where boots had no business being. Daisy Mormont was already moving, silent as a cat, slipping down the passage to rouse their guards with a touch and a glance. The Great John had thundered off toward the courtyard with half a dozen men at his heels, his rage barely leashed by Robb's command. Catelyn stayed close as ordered, her hand brushing Robb's sleeve whenever the corridor narrowed, as if to remind herself he was real and beside her. They met the first Frey men at a bend, 2 guards with spears, faces half hidden by helmets. Their eyes widened at the sight of Robb and his mother outside the feast, and Robb saw the instant calculation. Why is the wolf not in the hall? Where are the doors? Are the bolts ready? One of them started to step forward. My lord! Robb did not slow. Open the way, he said, voice flat and kingly, as if the notion of refusal was laughable. The guard hesitated. His fingers tightened on the spear. A second figure emerged behind them. Gray cloak, quiet posture, Bolton. The man's eyes were pale and blank. He said nothing. Catelyn felt her stomach twist. Bolton men were here, inside the stone, where they could strike from shadows. Roose Bolton's calm had always been a mask. Now she saw the edge beneath it in the stillness of his soldiers. Robb's gaze flicked to the Bolton man and held. Where is Lord Bolton? He asked. The man's mouth remained shut, a beat too long. Then, carefully, in the hall, your grace. Robb nodded once as if satisfied. Then he will learn soon enough that a hall can become a tomb, he said, and brushed past, shoulder nearly clipping the man. Behind them, a faint metallic click echoed, crossbow mechanisms being drawn back somewhere above. Catelyn's breath caught. Robb's hand went to his sword hilt, but he did not draw. Drawing too early turned suspicion into excuse. He needed distance, not argument. They reached a stairwell that spiraled down toward the courtyard. Halfway down, a serving boy burst upward carrying a tray of cups. He froze, eyes wide, and the tray wobbled. Wine sloshed, dark as blood. Robb caught the boy's wrist. How many men are in the galleries? He asked quietly. The boy's lips trembled. He glanced upward, as if afraid the stones might hear. Lots, he whispered. Crossbows, they said. They said wait for the song. What song? Catelyn demanded, voice sharp despite herself. The boy flinched. The rains, he stammered, and the words dropped into the stairwell like a stone into deep water. Robb released him. Go, he ordered. Drop that tray. Run. If you live, you'll remember you chose the right W. Aye. The boy stared at him as if he had never heard a lord speak mercy. Then he fled, feet pounding upward, leaving wine dripping down steps like a trail. Catelyn's hands shook. Robb, I know, Robb said, voice low. The calm in him was not peace. It was the hard stillness of a wolf about to bite. We go now. They descended into the courtyard's cold air, and the first thing Catelyn heard was Grey Wind's snarl, deep, furious, answering the tightening of stone with the promise of teeth. The courtyard was chaos held in a tight fist. Torches flared beneath overhangs, throwing jittering light over wet stone. Frey men were shifting into position along the walls, too many of them, too ready. Northern guards stood in a rough ring around Grey Wind, blades drawn low, eyes fixed on the gatehouse where iron-bound doors had begun to creep inward on their hinges. The Great John Umber was at the center of it, shoulders squared, his voice a growl that cut through the noise. Back, he thundered at a knot of Frey spearmen. Back or I'll feed you your own guts. A Frey captain lifted his hand, trying to sound authoritative. My lord, this is... Grey Wind lunged without warning, not at the captain but at the fear behind him. The direwolf's teeth snapped inches from a man's thigh, and the man screamed, stumbling back. The ring of Freys wavered, instinct screaming at them that spears were not enough when a predator decided to close. Robb emerged from the stairwell with Catelyn at his side. Every head turned. For a heartbeat, the courtyard held its breath the way a hall held its breath before an axe fell. Walder's man in the gatehouse shouted something, and the doors creaked harder, grinding toward shut. Robb saw the trap snap into place. Keep the wolf inside, seal the throat, then spill blood at leisure. Open that gate, Robb commanded, voice carrying. Now. The Frey captain's eyes darted. Up to the walls, toward the galleries where silhouettes shifted behind arrow slits. Crossbows, waiting. He wet his lips. My lord king, there is trouble in the hall. For your safety. For my safety, Robb repeated, and the cold in his tone made the words sharper than any blade. You will open it, or you will explain to your lord why you chose to die in front of me. The captain hesitated long enough to doom himself. From above, a crossbow twanged. The bolt struck a northern guardsman in the shoulder with a wet thud. The man cried out, falling to one knee. That was the moment the lie became truth. Move! Robb roared. The great John surged forward like a boulder thrown by a god. His axe came down on the nearest Frey spear shaft, splitting it. Then he drove his shoulder into the captain and sent him sprawling in the mud. Northern men rushed with him, blades flashing. Gray wind became a storm of fur and teeth. He ripped into a Frey man's arm, dragged him down, tore at his throat. Blood sprayed dark on wet stone. Horses screamed somewhere beyond the gatehouse, panicking at the scent. Catelyn's stomach lurched, but she did not freeze. She grabbed a fallen spear from the mud with both hands, held it awkwardly like a peasant, and thrust at a Frey man who lunged too close. The spear point caught him in the belly, and his face went slack with shock. He fell, and Catelyn wanted to vomit and weep and laugh all at once. Robb fought like a man who had decided death would take others first. His sword slid out quick and clean, parrying a spear thrust, and cutting down. He did not waste movement. He did not shout. He moved with the ruthless economy of a king who had learned the world was built to betray. The doors were nearly shut. Iron met iron with a groan. Great John Umber slammed his shoulder against them and bellowed, veins bulging. Northern men piled in. The gap widened a finger, then two. A Frey man stabbed through the opening. The spear tip scraped Greatjon's mail and sparked. Robb saw the galleries above fill with figures. The music from the hall shifted, faintly, unmistakably, toward a familiar melody. The rains of Castamere, creeping like poison through stone. They're doing it, someone screamed. Robb shoved Catelyn behind him and drove forward, toward the gate. If they stayed another heartbeat, bolts would rain down until the courtyard was a butcher's yard. Then, from the far shadow of the archway, two cloaked men stepped into the torchlight, and the air changed as if the night itself had remembered it could be dangerous in ways steel could not understand. In the great hall above, the wedding feast tried to become history. Walder Frey sat at his high seat with his blankets and his smug smile, watching musicians scrape their fiddles and servants carry steaming trenchers of meat. Laughter rose in polite bursts, too loud, too forced, like men clapping to prove they were happy. Rosalind Frey sat pale beside Edmure Tully, her hands trembling in her lap. Edmure's cheeks were flushed with wine and strain, his grin the grin of a man who wanted to believe in peace hard enough to make it real. Robb Stark's place at the table sat empty. At first, Walder thought it an insult. His eyes narrowed, and he leaned toward Lothar Frey, voice a rasp. "Where's the wolf boy?" he whispered. Lothar's smile did not slip, but his eyes darted toward the doors, toward the stairwell. "Coming," he murmured. "He'll come. He can't resist his own wedding show." Roose Bolton sat quietly among the northern lords, his expression mild. He lifted his cup and sipped as if tasting nothing. Beside him, Bolton men shifted like shadows, their eyes scanning. Black Walder Rivers leaned in, impatient. "We should start," he whispered. "The song." "Not yet," Walder hissed. "Not without the prize." The musicians began to change their tune subtly at first. A new melody crept into the hall, low and ominous. The kind of song that made even drunk men quiet without knowing why. The Rains of Castamere, a Lannister song, a knife wrapped in music. Some of the Stark men stiffened. Catelyn was not there to see it. Perhaps that was mercy. The Great John was not there to bellow. Perhaps that was the mistake. Roose Bolton's pale eyes flicked toward the door again. A heartbeat, then faintly from somewhere below shouts, steel ringing on stone. A scream cut off too quickly. Walder's smile faltered. His fingers twitched on the armrest. "What is that?" he rasped. Lothar's face tightened by a fraction. He turned his head slightly, listening. Another shout, another clang. The hall's laughter died like a candle pinched. Black Walder's eyes widened. "They're moving," he muttered. "Below, in the yard." Roose Bolton set his cup down with careful precision. He did not look surprised. He looked annoyed, the way a man looked when a lock picked cleanly was suddenly jammed. Walder Frey's voice sharpened, panic bleeding into it. "Close the doors," he snapped. "Now. Shut them. Shut." Before the command could fully fly, the door at the hall's far end burst open a hand's width as someone tried to force it from the other side. A bolt shot across the gap, thudding into the doorframe. A Frey crossbowman cursed. The hall erupted into sudden, ugly motion. Frey men surged toward exits. Bolton men rose, faces calm, hands moving to weapons as if rehearsed. Northern lords reached for swords, confusion turning to rage. Edmure stood, blinking, wine-sick and disbelieving, and Rosalind Frey whimpered softly, like a child in the dark. Walder Frey's mouth hung open, his old mind struggling to adjust. The plan was a feast. The plan was a clean slaughter. The plan was the wolf's head on a plate. But the wolf was not in the hall. Black Walder Rivers snarled. "Kill whoever you can," he hissed. "If the king escapes, we drown him later." Lothar's face went hard. He raised his hand sharply toward the musicians. "Keep playing," he barked, voice cracking. "Play louder." The fiddles screeched, the song surging, trying to smother panic with melody. But fear did not care for music. Roose Bolton turned his head toward the nearest Bolton captain and murmured something too soft to hear. The captain nodded once, expression blank. Walder Frey's eyes darted, searching the hall for control. For the first time in a very long life, he felt it slipping. And somewhere below, in the wet darkness of the courtyard, the trap's jaws were pried open by hands Walder Frey had not accounted for. The two cloaked men moved like blades sliding out of sleeves. One was broad, armored beneath his cloak, his steps heavy with controlled violence. The other was leaner, his hood pulled low, his hands bare despite the cold. The torchlight caught pale scars on his fingers, burn marks that looked like old writing. Robb saw them and felt the instant wrongness of strangers appearing in the exact moment the world turned. His sword lifted a fraction. The broad man spoke first, voice low but carrying. "Robb Stark," he said, as if naming him anchored the chaos. "Keep moving. Don't look back." The lean man raised his hand toward the gatehouse. The air shuddered. A faint smell of salt cut through blood and rain. A Frey crossbowman in the gallery above loosed a bolt. It would have taken Robb in the throat. The bolt struck an invisible barrier and dropped, clattering uselessly into mud. Catelyn gasped. Robb's eyes widened. The Great John bellowed in furious disbelief. The lean man murmured a word in a tongue Robb did not know. A thin coil of smoke rose from the wet stones at his feet, blacker than any hearth smoke. It spread, crawling low, slipping into corners, climbing the base of walls like a living thing. Where it touched torchlight, the flames guttered and bent, their light warping. Crossbowmen above cursed. They fired into the smoke, bolts vanishing with no clear targets. The broad man, Ser Colin Morriger, though Robb still did not know his name, charged forward and slammed his shoulder into the door gap beside the Great John. The two men together were a battering ram. Iron screamed. The gap widened. A Frey spearman lunged at Colin from the side. Colin caught the spear shaft with one hand and yanked, pulling the man off balance, then drove his sword into the man's chest with a single brutal thrust. He withdrew it cleanly and did not glance at the corpse. "Who are you?" the Great John roared, axe dripping. "No time," Colin snapped. "Move." Robb's eyes locked on the lean man, the sorcerer. "You serve Frey?" he demanded, because he had learned to distrust miracles. The sorcerer's hood tilted. "If I served Frey," he said softly, "you would already be dead." He stepped closer and flicked his fingers. The smoke thickened, billowing upward now, swallowing the lower galleries. Men coughed, swore, stumbled. The smell of salt grew stronger, stinging eyes. Another bolt flew from above and struck stone with a crack, missing entirely. "Go!" Colin bellowed. Robb grabbed Caitlyn's arm and hauled her forward. Northern guards surged around them like a shield wall in motion. Gray wind bounded ahead, snapping at any Frey man foolish enough to step into the wolf's path. His eyes were bright with killing fury, his muzzle slick with blood. The gate doors bucked as the Great John and Colin forced them wider. Beyond lay the bridge and the open night, rain, river, freedom. Then a horn blew from the tower, long and harsh, and Robb felt the castle's weight shift his eye. If every Frey in it had received the same command. Close, cut, kill. The sorcerer's voice came low near Robb's ear, as if he had moved without Robb noticing. "You were warned," he said. Robb stared at him. "By Stannis." The sorcerer's eyes glinted beneath the hood. "By someone with a longer shadow," he replied. Another bolt thudded into the mud near Robb's boot. He did not have time to press questions. He pushed Caitlyn toward the gap and followed, sword up, breath burning. The twins tried to swallow them. Smoke and steel and wolf teeth tore the throat open instead. They poured onto the bridge in a ragged, desperate tide. Rain slicked the stones, turning the bridge into a treacherous ribbon over black water. Torches along the parapets hissed and sputtered, their light broken by smoke drifting from the gatehouse behind. Frey men rushed onto the bridge from the far tower, spears lowered, trying to close the line and force the Northmen back into the courtyard like cattle. Gray wind hit them first. The dire wolf launched himself over a fallen body and slammed into a spearman's legs, dragging him down. The man's scream became a gurgle when Gray Wind's jaws closed on his throat. Blood spattered the stones and washed quickly into rainwater, turning pink rivulets toward the river. Robb shoved Caitlyn against the parapet where guards could shield her. "Stay," he snapped, but she did not look like a woman who could obey anymore. Her eyes were wide, face pale, yet her grip on the stolen spear remained tight. A Frey man lunged at Robb with a sword. Robb parried, then drove his blade through the man's belly with a grunt, ripping it free. He stepped over the corpse without looking down. Behind them, the courtyard doors groaned again. Frey men trying to force them shut while others tried to push through to pursue. The Great John Umber planted his boots and roared, swinging his axe in wide, savage arcs that kept the doorway from swallowing. Colin fought beside him, precise where the Great John was wild, his sword flashing like a needle of steel finding gaps in armor. The sorcerer, Selmer, walked into the bridge's center and knelt briefly, as if praying to the stones. He poured salt from a satchel in a tight crescent across the bridge. The rain should have washed it away. It did not. Clung, bright as bone. He touched it with 2 fingers. Flame leapt along the salt line, low, thin, controlled, creating a burning barrier that did not roar but hissed with steady menace. Frey men at the far end halted, faces tightening in fear. Fire on stone where fire should not be. "Keep going," Colin shouted. "Don't stop." Robb turned, eyes scanning the bridge. More Frey men were coming from ahead. Behind, bolts thudded into stone where crossbowmen finally found glimpses through smoke. The bridge had become a narrow throat, and they were trapped in it unless they broke through. Caitlyn's mind flashed with a terrible clarity. If they died here, their bodies would fall into the river and be carried away like refuse. No grave, no honor, only water-swallowing names. Robb lifted his voice. Raw. Wolves, he roared, and the shout was less command than howl. Northern men answered, rushing forward, slamming shields, driving spears into the Frey line.
Steel ran.
Men screamed. The bridge became slick with blood. Selmer rose and extended his hand toward the far tower. The air shimmered. A gust of wind, unnatural, sharp, swept down the bridge, carrying smoke forward into Frey faces, blinding them. Torches guttered. Crossbow strings went slack as vet fingers fumbled. In that moment of confusion, Robb surged, cutting down a Frey man who stumbled into him, then shoving past another. Gray wind bounded beside him, teeth snapping, a living spearhead. They broke through the far end in a burst of violence, spilling into the lower courtyard of the opposite tower where Frey men scrambled, panicked, trying to form lines too late. Colin's voice cut through behind them. Left, the postern. A small side gate stood half-hidden beneath an overhang, barred with a single iron beam. Northern men slammed into it. The beam snapped with a crack. They poured out into the rain-soaked road beyond the twins, leaving behind the castle's choking stone and the song that still screamed faintly from within, trying to pretend the world had not just changed. The woods a mile from the twins felt like a different world, dark trunks and dripping leaves, the smell of damp earth replacing the sour stink of stone and betrayal. Robb's men collapsed into a rough ring among the trees, panting, bleeding, eyes wide with the sharp shock of surviving something they had already begun to mourn in their minds. Gray wind prowled the perimeter, muzzle lifted, snarling at shadows. He was spattered with blood and rain, his eyes bright with fierce life. When a wounded man tried to approach, Gray wind bared his teeth until Robb snapped a command and the direwolf reluctantly backed off, still trembling with battle. Caitlin sank onto a fallen log, trembling so hard her teeth clicked. She pressed her hands to her face, not to weep but to keep herself from falling apart. When she lowered them, her palms were smeared with someone else's blood. Robb crouched in front of her, breathing hard, eyes scanning her like a man counting injuries. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. She shook her head, then laughed once, a broken sound. "No," she whispered, "not yet." The great John Umber staggered into the clearing, axe dripping, his beard matted with rain. "I killed 20, he bellowed, as if fury needed numbers to feel real. "Let me go back and kill the rest." "We don't," Robb snapped, voice sharp enough to cut. "Not now." The Grachan's face twisted, rage and disbelief warring. "They tried to butcher you like a pig," he roared. "We burned those towers to the river." Robb's eyes flashed. "And die doing it," he said. "We have men inside. We have Edmure inside." His jaw clenched at the name, guilt biting hard. "We have no siege engines. We have no time." Caitlyn's heart clenched. Edmure, Roslyn, a feast turned slaughter. The thought of her brother trapped in Walder Frey's jaws made her feel sick. Colin and Selmer stood apart from the Northmen, cloaks wet, posture calm amid chaos. Their calm was its own kind of violence. Colin watched the tree line as if expecting pursuit. Selmer's eyes were half-lidded, as if listening for magic in the rain. Robb turned on them suddenly, sword still in his hand. "Who are you?" he demanded, and the question carried the raw edge of a man who had almost died because he trusted the wrong strangers. Colin met his gaze without flinching. "Ser Colin Morriger," he said, "captain in service to Aelor Vaeloryn." The name landed in the clearing like a thrown stone. Men shifted. Some crossed themselves. Others spat. Dragons and foreign sorcery were stories to scare children, until they weren't. Selmer spoke next, voice quiet. "You were warned," he said. "Your mother heard it. Your wolf smelled it. We were sent because the ones who set this snare did not expect another hand to reach in and cut the rope." Robb's grip tightened on his sword. "Aelor Vaeloryn," he repeated, tasting the unfamiliar. "The Dragonlord." Colin nodded once. "He does not waste dragons on small blades," he said. "He sends people instead." The Grachan's eyes narrowed. "And why save us?" he growled. "Why should we trust dragon men?" Selmer's gaze shifted to him. "Trust nothing," he said simply. "But understand this. If you die, the north fractures. If the north fractures, the realm bleeds longer. And when winter comes, there will be no one strong enough left to stand." Catelyn felt her skin prickle at the words. Winter comes. Aelor's language. Melisandre's visions. As if the cold itself were an army. Robb stared at the two strangers, rain running down his face like tears he refused to shed. "If you serve him," he said, voice tight, "then tell him this: I will not be someone's pawn." Colin's mouth twitched. "He expects you to say that," he replied. "He prefers kings with teeth." A distant horn sounded from the twins, faint, but sharp enough to carry through rain. Pursuit, or a signal to close the world's doors behind them. Robb looked toward the sound, then back to his men. His voice dropped into cold command. "We move," he said, "now, before they find our trail. Before they decide Edmure's blood will pay for ours." Catelyn rose on unsteady legs. Robb caught her elbow briefly, steadying her, then released, as if contact might make him remember how close death had been. They vanished deeper into the woods, a wounded pack running from a stone trap, carrying with them the knowledge that the world's rules had shattered, and that somewhere far away a Dragonlord had reached into their fate and refused to let it end in a song. Inside the twins, Roose Bolton listened to screams the way other men listened to music. He stood in a side passage near the great hall, out of sight of Frey eyes, his pale face calm. Bolton men gathered around him like shadows pooling. The air smelled of sweat and spilled wine, and above it all the fiddles still tried to keep the song alive, scraping the reins of Castamere as if sound could force the world back into the shape it was meant to have. A Bolton captain leaned in, voice low. "He's gone," he murmured. "The wolf slipped the yard. He broke the gate. He's in the woods." For the first time, something flickered in Roose Bolton's eyes. Irritation, sharp and cold. He blinked once, slowly, as if the act were a kind of restraint. "How many saw?" he asked. "Too many," the captain admitted. "Frey men, some of ours. They'll talk." "They will talk," Roose agreed softly, and the calm in it was worse than rage. "And Walder will panic. Panic makes fools loud." A distant shout rose from the courtyard. A Frey man screamed something about fire on the bridge. Another screamed about a wolf tearing throats. Roose Bolton breathed in the chaos as if savoring it. "Two strangers," the captain continued. "Not Frey, not ours. One fought like a trained killer. The other, there was smoke, salt, fire where fire shouldn't be." Roose's gaze sharpened by a fraction. "The Dragonlord's hand," he murmured. The captain swallowed. "What do we do?" Roose turned his head slightly, listening to the hall. Walder Frey's voice was rising, shrill, furious, frightened. Commands tangled. Men shouted. The clean slaughter had become messy. Roose Bolton's mouth curved faintly. "We continue," he said. The captain frowned. "Without the king?" Roose's pale eyes slid to him. "A king is a symbol," he said. "Symbols can be delayed. Death cannot." He moved toward the hall side entrance, his steps unhurried. Bolton men shifted with him, hands on hilts. When Roose entered the hall, the scene was breaking apart. Northern lords stood, shouting, reaching for swords. Frey men were moving toward doors with crossbows raised. Servants screamed and fled. Rosalind Frey sobbed quietly beside Edmure, who looked as if the floor had vanished beneath him. Walder Frey screeched, voice cracking. "Shut it! Shut the doors! Kill them! Kill!" Roose Bolton stepped close enough to be heard without raising his voice. "My lord," he said softly. Walder whirled on him, face purple. "Bolton," he spat. "Your men let him go." Roose inclined his head a fraction, as if accepting blame in the way a man accepted rain. "The wolf is quick," he said, "but the deed is not lost." Walder's hands shook. "He'll come back with his army. he rasped. "He'll tear my towers down. He will not," Roose said gently. "Not immediately. He has no engines. He has wounded men. He has fear. He will run." Walder stared at him, breath rasping. "And if he does not?" Roose's eyes remained calm. "Then we make him," he said. Walder's gaze darted to the hall's chaos, to Stark men shouting, to Frey crossbowmen hesitating. "Kill them," he croaked again, desperate to turn panic into action. Roose Bolton's voice was low. "Yes," he said, "but carefully, not like butchers in a frenzy. Take captives, take hostages, take leverage." His eyes slid to Edmure Tully. "The trout is valuable." Walder's lips peeled back. "I don't care about value," he spat. "I care about blood." Roose Bolton's gaze hardened slightly. "Blood is easiest to spill," he said. "Leverage is harder to win." For a heartbeat, Walder Frey looked like he might bite. Then fear won. He nodded, jerky. Roose Bolton turned to his captain. "Seal the outer gates," he murmured. "Hunt the stragglers. Any Stark men left in our reach die. Any lord we can take alive, we take." The captain nodded and vanished into the crush. Roose Bolton watched the hall descend into slaughter, and his mind moved past it already. Past Frey screams and Stark curses, past spilled wine and blood on rushes, toward the next move. He would send word to Tywin Lannister. He would explain the failure in careful phrases. He would offer compensation. And somewhere in those careful phrases, he would mention a Dragonlord's servants walking in the rain with salt and smoke. In the Game of Kings, Roose Bolton had always preferred skinning a man slowly to see what lay beneath. Now, for the first time in years, he felt a hand on the knife that was not his own. Walder Frey's hall became what it had always been beneath the courtesy. A slaughterhouse with candles. The rains of Castamere screamed louder as the musicians played with shaking hands, their bows scraping like insects. Crossbows snapped. Men screamed. The first Stark man to fall did so with a bolt in his throat, eyes wide in disbelief as if he could not understand how bread and salt could be turned into a lie. A Frey man raised his sword and hacked at a fleeing servant, catching her shoulder. She fell shrieking. Another Frey laughed, drunken and wild, and stabbed downward again and again as if killing could wash away fear. Bolton men moved with less noise. They stepped into gaps, cut hamstrings, drove blades into kidneys, dragged bodies back from sight. Their calm made the slaughter feel colder. Roose Bolton did not need frenzy. He needed outcomes. Edmure Tully tried to reach Rosslyn, his face pale. A Frey guard slammed into him from behind, locking an arm around his throat. Edmure gagged, clawing, eyes bulging. Rosslyn sobbed, frozen, hands fluttering uselessly. Walder Frey screeched from his seat, voice cracking. "Don't kill the trout," he barked, suddenly remembering value. "Not yet," a crossbowman laughed. "He'll swim," he shouted, and loosed a bolt anyway. It missed Edmure by inches and struck a Riverlord behind him, who fell with a wet grunt. Chaos churned. Lords tried to draw swords. Some were cut down before steel cleared scabbards. Others made it to the doors, only to find them barred from outside. Iron bolts slammed home. In a side passage, a Frey boy, too young to have hair on his chin, vomited into his hands and then picked up a knife because older men were shouting at him to be brave. His eyes were huge. He stabbed a man who was already dying. The knife went in soft. The boy began to sob as if he had stabbed himself. Outside, faintly, the sound of distant fighting had faded. Robb Stark was gone. The wolf had slipped the snare. That fact sat in the hall like a second, invisible corpse, choking Walder Frey's triumph. Lothar Frey shoved through the crowd, his face tight. "He's out," he hissed to Walder. "He broke the bridge." Walder's lips peeled back, fury and fear tangled. "Then kill what we have," he rasped. "Kill them all. Make it so he comes back to nothing." Roose Bolton stepped closer, calm as ever. "Not all," he murmured. "Not if we want him to kneel." Walder whirled on him. "Kneel?" he screamed. He'll come back with wolves and fire and... His breath hitched. And dragons, maybe? Roose's pale eyes did not blink. Dragons do not come for weddings, he said. They come for kingdoms. Walder's fingers clawed at his blankets. Then I'll make sure he has no kingdom, he hissed. The slaughter continued. Stark banners fell into blood. Riverlords died with names on their lips. Some men tried to bargain. Some tried to pray. The hall answered them all with steel. Yet for every corpse that hit the rushes, the certainty of 6. Tory grew thinner. Robb Stark's absence was a wound in the plan. You could slaughter guests, yes. You could butcher bannermen, yes. But a king alive became a story that refused to end. And outside the twins, in the rain and woods, that story was already gathering teeth. By the time the moon climbed behind cloud, Robb's camp had become a moving shadow. They did not light fires. They did not sing. Men marched with cloaks pulled tight, carrying wounded on improvised litters of branches and cloaks. Every so often gray wind trotted ahead, then doubled back, sniffing, ears forward, guiding them like a creature made for flight through darkness. Colin and Selmer moved with them, neither asking permission nor offering comfort. They were not allies in the way lords were allies. They were tools sent by a distant hand, and tools did not soothe. They cut. At a halt in a deep hollow where trees formed a roof of dripping leaves, Robb finally turned to them again. His face was streaked with rain and blood. His eyes were bright with a fury that had nowhere to land yet. "You saved us," he said, voice low. "Fine. Now tell me why." Colin met his gaze. "Because Aelor Vaeloryn does not allow treachery to become law," he said simply. Robb's jaw clenched. "That's not an answer. Kings don't do things because they're offended. They do things because it benefits them." Selmer's mouth curved faintly. "You are learning," he said. Robb took a step closer, blade still in his hand though its tip was lowered. "What does he want?" "A realm that can stand," Colin said. "And a path through the Vale." Caitlin stiffened. "The Vale?" she demanded. "Lisa Arryn will never open her gates for us. Not while she clings to her boy and her fear." Selmer's eyes slid to her. "Gates open when the right hand turns the key," he said. Robb's gaze narrowed. "Meaning?" Colin reached into his cloak and produced a sealed parchment. The wax was dark, marked with a sigil Caitlin did not recognize. 3 heads? Yes, but twisted into an older shape, less heraldic and more like a symbol carved into stone long before banners mattered. "For the king in the north," Colin said and held it out. Robb hesitated, then took it. His fingers crushed the wax. He unfolded the parchment with the grim care of a man opening a wound. The ink was crisp, the hand controlled. "Robb Stark, you were invited to die because men wish to teach the realm that oaths can be broken with profit. Do not let them teach it. Leave the Riverlands. Go to the Vale. There is a man there who has built his life on turning doors into traps. He will try to do it to you. I will show you how to make the trap his. Trust your wolf. Trust your mother's fear. Trust no lord who smiles too easily. The North must live. Winter is not a story. Aelor Vaeloryn." Robb read it twice. The second time his hand shook slightly, anger and something else, relief perhaps, mixing like oil and fire. Caitlin leaned in and read over his shoulder. When she saw the line about doors into traps, her stomach tightened. Petyr Baelish. The thought of him made her skin crawl. He had always smiled too easily. Robb looked up, eyes hard. "He speaks as if he knows the Vale," he said. Colin nodded. "He knows men," he corrected. "And he knows Baelish." The great John spat into the mud. "I'd rather fight than run to a nest of snakes," he growled. Robb's gaze snapped to him. "We are not running," he said. "We are surviving." His voice dropped. "And we are learning." Selmer watched him, expression unreadable. "The Dragonlord will come," he said softly. "But not like you want. Not in rage. In time. Until then, you must keep breathing." Robb's fingers tightened around Aelor's letter until the parchment crinkled. He stared into the dark woods where the twins lay behind them, a stone beast chewing on the dead. "They took my men," he whispered, and the words were raw. "They took my friends." Catelyn touched his arm, and for once he did not flinch. "And they did not take you," she whispered back. "Not tonight." Robb's eyes burned. "Then we make tonight cost them," he said, and the vow in it was not heat. It was cold. Before dawn, the Freys learned that a wolf who escapes a snare does not forget the scent of the rope. Robb did not turn his whole host back on the twins. That would have been a siege, a slow death against stone. Instead, he sent teeth into the dark. Riders in small groups, silent men with axes, archers who knew how to disappear into trees. They struck at Frey outriders searching the woods, cutting them down before they could raise a shout. They took bolts and knives and coins from dead hands, not for greed but for proof. Grey Wind led the first ambush. He slipped through underbrush and pounced on a Frey scout from behind, tearing him down so fast the man's scream became a wet gasp. Northern arrows followed, feathered death flicking through rain. The rest of the scouts died in confusion, stumbling, trying to run, only to find wolves, human and otherwise, waiting. Robb watched the aftermath from the edge of the clearing, face unreadable. The Great John wanted to howl triumph. Catelyn wanted to close her eyes. Robb simply stared at the bodies until the anger in him settled into something harder. Colin and Selmer moved among the dead, searching quickly. Selmer plucked a small strip of cloth from one man's sleeve, pink. Frey. Colin found a scrap of gray wool stained dark. Bolton. Their presence confirmed what Robb already knew. Treachery wore many colors. When the sun finally began to lighten the clouds to a bruised gray, Robb gathered his surviving captains in a shallow ravine where the trees hid them from wandering eyes. He spread a damp map on a flat stone, weighting it with a dagger. "We go east," he said, "toward the Vale." Murmurs rose. Anger, disbelief, fear. Men had marched south to win battles, not to beg shelter from a widow who hid behind mountains. Yet Robb's gaze silenced them one by one. "They want me dead," he continued. "If I stay in the Riverlands, every road is a knife, every hall a trap. But the Vale is high and hard to reach, and if we can anchor there, we can choose where we bite next." The Great John grunted. "And what of the twins?" he demanded. "What of Frey?" Robb's eyes turned cold enough to make Catelyn shiver. "We remember," he said. "We do not forget, but we do not throw ourselves at stone walls while our wounded bleed." He looked down at the map again. "We will have justice. Not today." Catelyn watched her son, and she saw something new in him, something forged in the courtyard's smoke. He had been a young king learning war. Now he was becoming a king learning betrayal. Colin stepped forward slightly. "When you reach the Vale," he said, "you will meet resistance. A man there will offer you safety and ask for pieces of you in return." "Petyr Baelish," Catelyn said, voice tight. Colin nodded. "He likes doors," he said. "He likes falls." Selmer's eyes flicked to the sky where clouds raced. "The Dragonlord says you will learn how to make a door into an answer," he murmured. Robb folded Aelor's letter carefully and kept it inside his coat as if it were armor. He looked toward the north briefly, as if Winterfell's ghost might be listening through rain. Then he turned east. "Move," he ordered, and the word carried the weight of survival. They broke camp without leaving smoke. Men lifted litters. Horses were led quietly. Wolves melted into the trees and began the long, hard march toward mountains. Behind them, the twins squatted on its bridge like a spider that had lost its prey but still held blood on its fangs. Inside those stones, Walder Frey would wake to realize the wolf had slipped away. Roose Bolton would sharpen his next lie. Tywin Lannister would hear and adjust. And far across the sea, on Dragonstone's black shores, Kezharys would lift his colossal head and roar at the gray morning, as if announcing to the world that fate had been dragged off its old road and forced onto a new one.